The wind howled through the abandoned facility in the Nevada desert, carrying with it the whispers of secrets buried for decades. In the dim light of a government archive, a single manila folder bears the classification Project Phoenix, Eyes Only. The year is 1991, and what lies within these yellowed pages would shake the very foundations of what the world believed about the Cold War, about science, and about the thin line between genius and madness. The file opens with a photograph, 5 men in crisp suits standing before what appears to be an impossible machine, their faces partially obscured by shadows and time. Below their image, a single typed line reads, "Subject status unknown. Last contact March 15th, 1968. These were not ordinary men. They were Dr. Heinrich Krauss, Dr. Wilhelm Brenner, Dr. Klaus Richter, Dr. Otto Steiner, and Dr. Franz Müller. 5 German aerospace engineers who, according to official records, died during the final days of World War II. According to this file, they had been living and working in complete secrecy for the American government for over 2 decades. The first page of the dossier bears the unmistakable letterhead of the Central Intelligence Agency, dated April 3rd, 1943. The operation was codenamed Silent Harvest, a sub-project of the larger and more infamous Operation Paperclip. But unlike the scientists who were publicly recruited to help America reach the moon, these 5 men were different. They possessed knowledge so dangerous, so revolutionary, that their very existence had to be erased from history. The document describes how they were not recruited, they were taken. In the chaos of Berlin's final collapse, as the city burned and the Third Reich crumbled, American operatives moved like ghosts through the rubble, extracting not just technology, but the minds that created it. What made these particular scientists so valuable that the American government would risk such an elaborate deception? The answer lay in their work on something called Project Valkyrie, a theoretical propulsion system that could revolutionize not just flight, but warfare itself. The technology they had been developing in the final months of the war wasn't just advanced for its time. It was decades ahead of anything the world had seen. When American intelligence learned of their research, the decision was made at the highest levels of government. These men could not be allowed to fall into Soviet hands, nor could they be permitted to continue their work for what remained of Nazi Germany. They had to disappear completely, reborn as American assets in a war that was just beginning. The extraction was surgical in its precision. On the night of April 15th, 1943, as Allied bombers pounded Berlin into submission, a small team of OSS operatives infiltrated the underground facility where the 5 scientists were conducting their final experiments. The official story would be simple. The facility suffered a direct hit. All personnel presumed dead, bodies never recovered. But the reality, as detailed in the classified reports, was far more complex. The scientists were drugged, transported, and relocated to a facility so secret that it didn't appear on any official government records. Their families were told they had died heroes of the fatherland. The world moved on, never knowing that 5 of Germany's brightest minds had simply vanished into the American intelligence apparatus. If you're finding this story as gripping as we are, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more hidden histories that will challenge everything you thought you knew about the past. Because what happened next would make their wartime disappearance look like child's play. The facility where the 5 scientists found themselves was designated only as Installation 7, a sprawling complex buried deep beneath the Mojave Desert, far from prying eyes and curious minds. According to the personnel files, the scientists were initially resistant to their new circumstances. Dr. Grauss, the apparent leader of the group, had attempted to refuse cooperation entirely. The psychological evaluation reports paint a picture of men torn between their scientific curiosity and their moral obligations. They had been taken from everything they knew, told their families believed them dead, and offered a choice that was no choice at all: work for America, or spend the rest of their lives in solitary confinement. The breakthrough came in late 1944, when Dr. Muller apparently convinced his colleagues that their knowledge could be used to end the war more quickly, potentially saving lives on both sides. The decision to cooperate was recorded in a memo dated December 7th, 1944, exactly 3 years after Pearl Harbor. Whether this timing was coincidental or deliberately symbolic remained unclear from the documents, but from that moment forward, the 5 men threw themselves into their work with an intensity that both impressed and concerned their American handlers. The project they were assigned to work on was unlike anything the American military had conceived before. Using the theoretical framework they had developed in Germany, combined with resources and materials that the crumbling Nazi regime could never have provided, they began designing what the documents referred to only as the platform. Early sketches and blueprints, partially redacted even in these classified files, suggested a craft capable of speeds and maneuvers that defied conventional understanding of aerodynamics. The propulsion system appeared to operate on principles that wouldn't be publicly acknowledged by mainstream science for decades. Progress reports from 1945 through 1950 chronicle a series of remarkable breakthroughs. The scientists had apparently solved fundamental problems of energy generation and gravitational manipulation that had puzzled physicists since Einstein first published his theories. Their work was so advanced that even the American scientists brought in to oversee the project struggled to understand the basic principles involved. Dr. Brenner had developed what he called field manipulation technology that could theoretically allow a craft to move without conventional propulsion. Dr. Richter's contributions involved materials, science breakthroughs that produced alloys stronger and lighter than anything previously known. Dr. Steiner's work focused on energy systems that seemed to draw power from sources not yet understood by conventional science. By 1955, the documents indicate that the first working prototype had been completed. The test reports, heavily redacted, suggest that the initial trials exceeded all expectations. The craft, designated Phoenix 1, had apparently achieved sustained flight at speeds approaching Mach 10, with maneuverability that defied physics as it was then understood. More remarkably, it seemed to produce no heat signature, no electromagnetic disturbance, and virtually no sound. It was, according to the technical specifications, the perfect military vehicle, invisible, untouchable, and capable of carrying payloads that could strike anywhere on Earth within hours. But success bred new problems. The more advanced their technology became, the more paranoid the government handlers grew about security. The 5 scientists found themselves increasingly isolated, their movements restricted, their communications monitored. They were no longer guests or even prisoners. They had become the most valuable and dangerous assets in American hands. The psychological evaluations from this period suggest growing tension and resentment among the group. Dr. Krauss, in particular, seemed to be developing what the reports called problematic ideologies regarding the use of their technology. The turning point came in 1960, when the scientists made a request that sent shockwaves through the highest levels of government. They wanted to contact their families, the wives and children who had been mourning them for nearly 2 decades. Dr. Muller had apparently learned that his daughter, who had been only 8 when he disappeared, was now married and had children of her own. Dr. Steiner discovered that his wife had remarried, believing herself a widow. The emotional toll of their isolation was becoming unbearable, and they threatened to cease all cooperation unless some accommodation could be made. The government's response was swift and absolute. Contact with the outside world was impossible. The scientists' official deaths could not be undone without exposing the entire operation. The 5 men were informed that they were, for all practical purposes, ghosts, dead to the world they had once known, alive only within the walls of Installation 7. The psychological reports from late 1960 describe a dramatic shift in the scientists' demeanor. They had become withdrawn, secretive, and according to their handlers, possibly dangerous. It was during this period of tension that the final phase of Project Phoenix began. The government had decided that the technology was ready for weaponization. The peaceful research craft that the scientists had developed was to be transformed into the ultimate military weapon, a platform capable of delivering nuclear warheads to any target on Earth with complete invisibility and unstoppable speed. For the first time since their capture, the 5 scientists found themselves united in opposition to their captors' plans. The documents from 1967 reveal a project in crisis. The scientists had begun to sabotage their own work, introducing subtle flaws and delays that prevented the weaponization process from moving forward. Dr. Krause had apparently convinced his colleagues that they had a moral obligation to prevent their technology from being used for mass destruction. The situation reached a breaking point when government officials threatened to bring in other scientists to complete the work, effectively making the original 5 expendable. What happened next would become one of the most closely guarded secrets in American history. On March 15, 1968, during what was supposed to be the final test of the weaponized Phoenix platform, something went catastrophically wrong. The official report, filed just hours after the incident, stated simply, "Total system failure. All personnel presumed lost. Facility sealed pending investigation." But the truth, as revealed in classified memos exchanged between the highest levels of government, was far more disturbing. According to eyewitness accounts from surviving personnel, the 5 scientists had somehow taken control of the Phoenix craft during the final test. Security footage, described in detail but apparently destroyed shortly after the incident, showed the craft rising from its underground hangar and hovering motionless above Installation 7 for exactly 17 minutes. During this time, all electrical systems within a 50-mile radius experienced complete failure. Radio communications went dead. Vehicles stopped running. Even battery-powered devices ceased to function. Then, according to the reports, something impossible happened. The craft didn't fly away. It simply vanished. Not disappeared from radar, not moved too fast to track, but literally ceased to exist in the space it had occupied. One moment it was there, clearly visible to the hundreds of personnel watching from the facility, and the next moment it was gone, leaving behind only empty sky and a silence so profound that witnesses described it as unnatural. The immediate aftermath was chaos. Search teams scoured thousands of square miles of desert, finding no trace of the craft or its occupants. Satellite surveillance detected no unusual activity. International monitoring stations reported no unidentified objects crossing their airspace. The Phoenix craft, along with Dr. Heinrich Krause, Dr. Wilhelm Brenner, Dr. Klaus Richter, Dr. Otto Steiner, and Dr. Franz Müller, had simply vanished from existence. But the story doesn't end there, and what investigators discovered next would challenge everything they thought they knew about the 5 scientists and their true intentions. Make sure you're subscribed, because the revelation that follows will completely rewrite the narrative of Project Phoenix and force us to question who these men really were. The investigation into the disappearance quickly uncovered disturbing inconsistencies in the scientists' backgrounds. When investigators attempted to verify the original intelligence reports from 1943, they found something that shouldn't have been possible. According to German records, thoroughly examined after the war, none of the 5 men had ever existed. The underground facility in Berlin, where they were supposedly captured, had never been built. Project Valkyrie, their alleged research program, appeared nowhere in the extensive Nazi scientific archives recovered by Allied forces. More troubling still, when investigators examined the personnel files from Installation 7, they found gaps and inconsistencies that suggested a far more complex deception. Medical records showed that all 5 men had blood types and genetic markers that were statistically impossible for men born in Germany during the early 1900s. Psychological evaluations revealed knowledge of scientific principles and mathematical concepts that wouldn't be developed by mainstream science for decades. Most disturbing of all, linguistic analysis of their recorded conversations showed speech patterns and dialectical variations that didn't match any known German regional variants. The terrifying possibility began to emerge that the 5 scientists weren't German refugees at all. They weren't even from 1943. Carbon dating of personal items found in their quarters, items they claimed were family heirlooms from their German childhoods, showed materials and manufacturing techniques that wouldn't exist until the 1960s. Photographs they kept of their supposed families, when subjected to advanced analysis, revealed photographic processes and paper compositions that were decades ahead of 1940s technology. A secret investigation, codenamed Origin, was launched to determine the true identity of the 5 scientists. What they discovered challenged the fundamental assumptions about the entire Phoenix project. According to the classified findings, the men who called themselves Krauss, Brenner, Richter, Steiner, and Müller had somehow possessed complete knowledge of technologies that wouldn't be invented for decades. They hadn't been developing new science. They had been reconstructing science they already knew. The most chilling discovery came when investigators realized that the Phoenix craft's disappearance hadn't been an escape. It had been a return. Analysis of the electromagnetic disturbances recorded during the vanishing revealed patterns that suggested the craft hadn't moved through space in any conventional sense. Instead, it appeared to have moved through time itself. The 17 minutes of electrical silence that preceded the disappearance corresponded exactly to temporal displacement calculations found hidden in Dr. Krauss's personal notes. The final classified memo in the Phoenix file, dated December 24, 1971, contained a conclusion so disturbing that it was marked for destruction immediately after reading. The investigation had determined that the 5 scientists were most likely visitors from the future, time travelers who had come back to 1943 with the specific mission of ensuring that their technology would be developed during the Cold War era. Their apparent resistance to weaponization hadn't been moral objection. It had been a calculated delay to ensure the technology emerged at precisely the right moment in history. The memo concluded with a chilling possibility. If the scientists were indeed from the future, then their disappearance in 1968 suggested they had completed their mission and returned to their own time. But what if that wasn't the end? What if March 15, 1968 wasn't when they returned to their future, but when they traveled even further back to begin the cycle again? The electromagnetic signature of their disappearance was identical to theoretical calculations for temporal displacement, suggesting they might have traveled to any point in history. As investigators closed the Phoenix file, one final piece of evidence emerged that would haunt the intelligence community for decades. In a safety deposit box registered under the name Heinrich Krause, opened only after his disappearance, they found a single photograph. The image showed 5 men in modern clothes standing before what appeared to be a futuristic version of the Phoenix craft. But it wasn't the craft that made investigators' blood run cold. It was the date stamp on the photograph, March 16, 2024. The photograph suggested that somewhere in time, the 5 scientists still existed, still worked, and still possessed technology beyond human understanding. Whether they were guardians of humanity's technological development or something far more sinister remained unknown. The Phoenix project had ended not with answers, but with the terrifying realization that time itself might be far less linear than anyone had ever imagined. The file closes with a single handwritten note from the director of the investigation. Recommend immediate termination of all temporal research programs. Some doors should never be opened. Some knowledge is too dangerous to possess. The Phoenix scientists understood this. The question is whether we do. Today, Installation 7 sits empty beneath the Nevada desert, its concrete corridors echoing with the ghosts of impossible science and unanswerable questions. The 5 men who changed everything, Dr. Heinrich Krause, Dr. Wilhelm Brenner, Dr. Klaus Richter, Dr. Otto Steiner, and Dr. Franz Müller, remain one of history's greatest mysteries. Were they German scientists rescued from the chaos of World War II? Were they visitors from the future, manipulating history from the shadows? Or were they something else entirely? Something so far beyond human understanding that we lack the concepts to even describe what they truly were. The truth, like the Phoenix craft itself, has vanished into the void of classified history. But somewhere, in the space between moments, in the silence between heartbeats, 5 men continue their work in the shadows of time itself. And perhaps, just perhaps, that photograph from 2024 suggests their story is far from over. What do you think happened to the Phoenix scientists? Share your theories in the comments below. Hit that like button if this story left you questioning everything you thought you knew about time and space. And subscribe for more mysteries that blur the line between history and impossibility. Because in a universe where time travel might be possible, every mystery is just waiting for its moment to resurface. The Phoenix file remains classified to this day, buried in archives so secret that even their locations are classified. But the questions it raises continue to echo through the halls of power. If we can't trust time itself to be linear, what else might be hiding in the shadows of history? And more importantly, who else might be watching us from the spaces between seconds, waiting for their moment to reshape the world once again?